Here we go. And now tell me if I need to change my display settings, Sarah.
Yes, ma'am.
I do. All right. Here we are. We're going to swap. How's that look?
I am still seeing your next slide.
All right. Well, then let's try it again. Sit tight, folks. There have been all kinds of challenges today.
Looking good now.
Now it's looking good. All right. So I am delighted to be here with all of you and through the magic of the space-time continuum with students who will be tuning in later to record a recording of this session. So it's great to be here now and also then. Today we're going to be exploring the human side of agricultural economics and agribusiness, and really looking at some factors that affect our outlooks and especially decision making and behavior. If we go back to the roots of what is economics all about, it is all about behavior and the human element. And so that is what we're going to be exploring today. As Sarah mentioned, I do a number of things. At the very top of this, I want to come clean and let you know that I am not a mental health professional. I am not a counselor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I am a working producer. My upbringing was in very urban surroundings. And then through some life experiences, including the Peace Corps, I found my way to agriculture, working professionally at the Department of Agriculture for many years, and then farming together with my husband when we got married in 2012. And it was really through the experience of some crises that we went through on our own farm that led me into this area of the human side of agriculture and looking at agricultural stress, what that does to us as human beings, as farm operators, as farm family members, as community members, and as entities in the agricultural business world. So these are just sort of a few of our shots in action. The big city building is my office in St. Paul, and the others are some of the it's my bona fide, so that you can see what we have in action. And today we have cattle out on pasture doing just what they're doing there. And we loaded hogs this morning and took those down to a processor. So really my life is reflected on this slide for you. Many states are becoming more and more attuned to the challenges that producers are facing, and understanding that it's really important to have resources there to help them juggle all the balls that they have in the air. And I wanted to start out with this slide of the Kansas Ag Stress Resource page. And I understand that students in the program could be all over the country and are all over the country. And I want to assure you that there are organizations like the Kansas Department of Ag, Minnesota Department of Ag, who are involved in offering support to producers, collaborating with other organizations in the states. And if you're in Kansas, please visit this page and see what's available. And if you're not in Kansas, just do a little Googling from your state and find out, and throw in your state's words, ag stress, farm stress, farm mental health, and see what comes up, because you will find that there are more and more resources all the time on the Department of Ag side, the land grant side, and through many other farm organizations. the way I have come to talk about farm stress, and I will say that this includes mental health, but I don't think it is exclusively mental health related. I think stress can affect and be affected by mental health, but there are also aspects of stress that really have very little to do with mental health. So we're talking about this quite broadly today. But the metaphor that I use is that farm stress is like an onion. It's pretty easy to see an outside layer and the appearance of what might be underneath inside that onion. But I propose to you that the outside layer of the onion changes. In 2022 right now, the outside layer of our onion, if I look at farm stress and I say, well, what is causing farm stress? What are the sources of our farm stress? How is it manifesting itself? I see things like rising input prices and scarcity of inputs, making farmers very nervous, not only for this year, production year, but looking ahead toward next year. A lot of them locked in prices last fall, so this spring is not that much of a challenge, but they're looking ahead. I'm looking at things like that center picture is northern Minnesota, which has largely been underwater and really delayed planting. We've had incredible rains, incredible cold weather. And so where we are, people are getting very nervous about getting a crop in the ground. Bird flu. I was just looking at the updated bird flu statistics. Kansas has 7,000 birds that have been destroyed. We have 3 million in Minnesota. Iowa has 13 million. This is a pandemic, an animal pandemic that is making producers, has affected a lot of producers and is making others very nervous. And that's true whether they're commercial operators or whether they have backyard flocks. And it's one of those things that you see bearing down on you. And you say, my God, I can do everything in my power, but really how do I stop this? We also have had terrible weather. You can see down, that's my commissioner standing looking at some destroyed infrastructure on our farm. Just terrible storms have gone through. Now, if we looked at farm stress, that what did the outside layer of the onion look like last year? It looked like drought in Minnesota. It looked like just terrible drought crawling across the state. It looked like people's having to sell cattle. It looked like reduced yields. It looked like a lot of financial worries and challenges with meeting contract obligations. If we look back a year or two before that, it was all coronavirus all the time. So these things really change. The years before that, we saw some persistently low farm returns, and net farm income really was suffering. We had people reducing their asset levels and having some big challenges. And the red states here are those that had during that period of time more financial strain than the more lightly colored states. But across the board, it was really challenging persistently for years and years. And so every time we look at it, people say, well, if we could just solve this problem, if we could just solve the low price problem, we wouldn't have farm stress. If we could just solve coronavirus, we wouldn't have farm stress. If we didn't have about drought, we wouldn't have farm stress. What I would like you to do now is use the chat and think about the setting that you're in, where you're in the United States, what is facing agriculture. I shared what's going on in Minnesota right now, but what does the outside layer of your onion of stress look like right now? Superficially, what is there? And because I'm in presenter mode, I can't see what you're writing, but maybe Sarah could take a look and read off a couple of things that come in through the chat. Are we getting any ideas there, Sarah?
Do not have any ideas, but Meg, I can share my own personal journey, which has been twofold. One, we have had challenges getting folks out on our property to put fencing in, both from a supply standpoint, but also from a getting those professionals out on our property. Mm-hmm. And then two, here in Kansas, we have, many of us have dealt with fires. So those are both and as you and I spoke about, we also have dealt with significant drought in areas of Kansas. So those are a few things that I personally can share if you want to elaborate on them.
No, I don't think so. I just, I think here we're just recognizing that everybody's onion's a little bit different on the outside layer, at least.
So Russ just shared historically high fertilizer prices.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I listened to a podcast from Great Britain, and they, like us, have seen these prices rocket, and they're 4 times as expensive. Nitrogen is 4 times as expensive. I haven't priced it here recently, and I'm really grateful that I have nitrogen factories in the form of my dairy cows that are out producing nitrogen right now, as a matter of fact, but not everybody has that. So I think those are excellent observations that, what our onion looks like changes, but if we peel back the outer layer of the onion, we see that farm stress is far more complex than the superficial crisis du jour. And we see a huge array of challenges, many of which farmers have very little control over. We see farm debt, we see what's going on with export market, we see commodity prices. Now, when I made the onion, they were low. Right now they're high. But then there's that tension of, are my input costs going to cover these delightfully high prices? And if I'm a crop producer, they're delightfully high. And if I'm a livestock producer, they're woefully high, because I'm looking at how I am going to be able to afford feed. Farm succession transfer issues, we see a lot that is affecting many farmers very profoundly, the entire family dynamic there in Minnesota. We have like many of you, we have an aging farm population, access to credit, family dynamics, divorce, substance abuse, challenges with kids. So all of these factors are true to some people more than others, but there is a blend of challenges all the time. And I think it's really important to recognize that we can't always see below the surface of people's individual onions as to what's going on, but we have to recognize that people are wrestling with challenges and have different capacities. And if you are dealing with a whole lot of these simultaneously, your capacity to deal with little challenges can really be impinged upon. And down in the corner there, I have the 11th commandment, and that's some people call it the agrarian imperative. My friend Sean Brotherson from NDSU coins it as the 11th commandment. And that is this real deeply felt sense of obligation that my role here, the commandment is thou shalt farm, is that I have to find a way to make all of these things work. And the fact that farming is more, and you've heard this said a million times, it is more than a profession, it is an identity. It's more than your job, it's who you are. And so farmers, I think, are balanced with this huge sense of responsibility for all of those, making their farms work, making their ranches work, in terms of caring for their animals, caring for their land, caring for their soil, caring for their livestock, caring for their communities. A sense that it's on my shoulders. I'm the person who needs to make this work. And yet I'm balanced on a very narrow point of control. And many of those parts of the onion we talked about are things that are just beyond your control. And so there's another source of tension of feeling like I really need to make this all work, but I can't control the things that I need to control to make them work. So there can be some real deep frustrations there. And I think there are also some inherent challenges. My work, I talk to a lot of people who are not as familiar with agriculture, and they want to know what is it about farming? Like, why is farming different than anything else? Isn't everybody stressed? And I say, well, I think there are some inherent challenges that we need to be aware of and consider. And one of those is the farmers work where they live. You know, we work from home. People, I guess, are having a little bit more experience with this, since many people are now working from home or sometimes living at work. But we traditionally have, and we look out the window and we see what has not been done during the day, or we see the cows are out, or we don't feel like we can really go in because the job's not finished. And so it's always there. There's just not really closing a door, turning off a computer and saying, well, I don't have to worry about this until tomorrow. Another challenge is that your coworkers can be mostly family. And sometimes that's fantastic, and everything is fairies and elves and people get along great and are in sync. And sometimes you'd like to throw your family out the window. Or sometimes somebody in the family marries a snake that you don't trust and you don't like and you don't get together with. Well, you can't fire your family. I mean, you can, but you can't. And so sometimes that that requirement that you work together is profoundly challenging, and you may not get together. You may not be in sync and be getting along in terms of the farm business, but then a holiday comes and everybody's going to mom or grandma's or dad's house, and there's the expectation that we are a family that loves each other. And so that presents a tension for a lot of people in a lot of situations. I think also most of us have off-farm jobs. You know, at least one of the adults on a farm, sometimes more than one, has an off-farm job, and that presents other demands. So, you know, in my situation, I do my Department of Ag work and I come home at the end of the day and I've had a full day and my spouse looks at me like, well, where have you been all the day, you know, playing on the computer while I've been dealing with all the problems on the farm. And then I roll up my sleeves and I do chores at night. And so then for that spouse who is working off the farm, or that adult who's working off the farm, sometimes there's a real tension too between the farm needs this from me, but my off-farm job that gives me a salary and benefits needs something else from me. And how do I switch gears? And do my coworkers understand, and my off-farm job understand kind of why I may be off on a certain day, why I may be late, why I may be distracted because something is happening on the farm. I think competition and envy is something that exists in farm country that we don't like to admit, but I think it very much exists. And although there are fewer of us on the landscape, it seems like we are in competition with each other. We are watching to see what other people are doing. Sometimes there are long-standing feuds that go back many years. Sometimes there are disagreements over rental contracts, over competition for land, over fences. Have had some of those issues on my own sense. So on the one hand, I think that farm folk are looked at as, oh, you know, it's the happy peasants out working with each other, drinking switchel and making hay together and driving the teams of horses. And that is definitely not always the case. There are some, we are in business and we sometimes see that we're in competition with each other. Loss of peers and community, I think, has been huge. We have certainly as much or more farmland in production as we have had, you know, over the past 30 or 40 years, but we have fewer farms. We have fewer farming operations. I have a friend in Southwest Minnesota who says, you know, when we moved to this farm in 1977, she said, I could look out and see 15 other families. I could see 15 other farmsteads from my front porch. And now I look out there and I see 3. And all the land is still in farming. And now we have some wind turbines and some solar farms, but the people are gone. And so this loss of peers, loss of community, loss of people who know what your life is like because they're living it too, I don't think we can underestimate that. And then we have some of the outside forces that come at producers that make us feel self-conscious or sometimes defensive, in that sometimes we're praised to the skies, you know, the original small business people, the yeoman farmer, the salt of the earth, the farmers who feed us. And then contrast that with, you bad farmers who are mean to your animals and are polluting soil and groundwater. And so sometimes we don't really know whether we're going to be praised, whether we're going to be blamed, and that can be very unsettling. So what happens in the face of stressors and some of these challenges that we face? I think you can see on the screen here that there can be some real indicators of physical indicators and mental indicators of when we have reached the end of our rope or we're getting close to the end of our rope. Everything from poor sleep, which is very common, to hygiene. We have a neighbor who began to look a little bit like, who was that movie star from the 1970s who got quite shaggy looking? And, we sort of picked up on the fact that maybe all was not well. Eating problems, irritability, withdrawal, depression and anxiety. And then that bottom one of paralysis and the inability to make decisions. And that is a huge indicator that something is profoundly wrong when people feel stuck. And I have spoken with farmers who have gone through this episodically and sometimes have had some real resistance to seeking help, whether that is going to their doctor, whether that is going to see a counselor, whether that is sometimes talking to a clergy person, a spouse, calling a helpline. When you're stuck, you're stuck. And sometimes you need a hand and some encouragement to get through that. But these are all very real symptoms. And some of these are easier to talk about than others. I think sleep is one of the easiest entrees into having a conversation if you're concerned about a business associate, a farm neighbor, somebody that you work with, a family member, is sort of talking about, well, how have you been sleeping? And that can sometimes open a conversation into some of these other issues that are going on, but that's kind of a safe thing to talk about. I put this slide in because this is something that we are concerned about throughout agriculture and aware of, that rural suicides are more common than urban suicides. And we have done some in-depth research into suicides that take place in farm residences. So that would be anybody from somebody classified as the primary farm operator, principal operator, to others who live on farms, spouses, farm partners, youth on farms. And we see that the farm resident rates are higher than the non-resident rates for both men and for women, and that men's propensity to suicide is greater than women's. So suicide is a real concern and a danger. And there are many opportunities to become more aware of this and to work on prevention. And there are organizations like the NAMI, National Institute of Mental Illness, which has chapters in all states, departments of health, and other suicide prevention resources that I think are very timely and good to know about. But why don't farmers seek help? I talk to a lot of social services and psychological services people in my work, and they want to know why is it hard for us to reach farmers? And here's some of the kind of internal dialogue that I have heard both in myself and that I have seen others express. And one of those statements is, going back to this, it's my job to make sure that this all works, is kind of this: I should be able to handle this myself. And even if I couldn't, where would I even go to get help? There's not a whole lot of providers in rural areas. Would they even understand where I'm coming from being a farmer? They would probably just say, find a different job or go on vacation. I just don't think they would understand what I am dealing with. And I would have a hard time explaining to them how all of this fits together. And if I could do that, and I did find somebody locally, what if other people found out? And what if other people, what are they going to say? We can be pretty judgy in agriculture. Are they going to whisper behind my back? Are they going to use this against me and try to undercut me? And how would I even afford it? I mean, I have a huge deductible. And so, we have health insurance, but I really need to save that for if somebody gets hurt on the farm. That's what that money is for. It's not just to go and talk to somebody about my problems. My problems, I can just suck it up and deal with it. I don't have time to do this. I'm feeling behind on the farm anyway. I've got all this stuff to do. What I really need to do is get things working better here and not waste time driving around. And at the end of the day, you know what? I just don't think anybody can fix what's wrong. And that terrifying sense of hopelessness. So finding opportunities to interact, intervene, push back on some of these assumptions that farmers have in a gentle and respectful way can go a great distance toward changing some of this thinking and looking to help farmers realize that they are not alone in either what they're wrestling with or in having to wrestle with it by themselves, that there are sources of support. And also recognizing that, not everybody needs the same thing. Some people who are in stress need mental health professionals. I think we mentioned this before, need to see a doctor, need to go talk to a clergy person, but some need a better banker. Some need an attorney. Some need to come to a different understanding, need a different regulatory person on their farm, need a different dairy inspector, for example. Ours was here this week. So it's important to recognize that not everybody's situation is the same. There are commonalities, but also not everybody's fixes are the same. I want to talk about some of the resources that we have in Minnesota, and I know that you do too if you look around for them. In terms of financial issues, farmer lender mediation is a program that is supported by USDA. It exists in many, many states. It looked differently. In some places, Extension does this work. In some places, the Department of Agriculture does this work. Some are more active than others, but it is worth looking into. Until recently, farmer lender mediation really focused just on lender issues and things like bankruptcy, foreclosure, equipment repossession, something that where there was an asset that was in dispute, and the mediators do have a commitment to taking a neutral view and helping parties come to a mutually agreeable understanding. So they don't work for the farmer, they don't work for the creditor, they work to find agreement. That purview has expanded, and they are now able to work on other issues, for example, farm transition and some of the tensions that go on within families that have disagreements about reaching consensus on what should happen to the farm, who is getting what, who is giving what, who is doing what. So there's an expansion there. Rural Finance Authority, a number of departments of agriculture have either direct or indirect loan programs, working through local lenders and providing some backstopping and buying down interest rates for farm loans for different, for beginning farmers, for expansions, for livestock. It looks different in different places, but when a farmer is having financial issues, that's definitely worth looking into. Confidential helplines and hotlines. These are really taking off around the country. I know Kansas has one. The Department of Agriculture, Minnesota, we've had one since 2013. There is a national helpline that's operated by Farm Aid that is used frequently. And those counselors can work with farmers directly, but then they can also help them get to resources in their own state. So this is another thing that's worth looking around in your state to find out, what resource do I have? How do people reach it? And put it in your wallet or put it in your phone. So if you're out and you talk to somebody who's having a challenge, and they would like to talk to a counselor. Sometimes it's really easy to talk to or text with somebody that you don't know. Sometimes that's less intimidating than talking face to face or sitting down with somebody who knows you. Kind of depends on the person, but those are out there. And I think we all say no concern is too small. In Minnesota, we are fortunate to have 2 dedicated farmer counselor therapists who are funded by our legislature. And so they serve farmers and family members directly. There's no cost, there's no paperwork, there's no insurance, and they work just with farmers. We've had this program since the late 1980s. It has been very successful. They're both contract providers, but other states do this differently. And some, I was just learning about South Dakota, for example, has a voucher program so that farmers can obtain a voucher for mental health services. So it looks a little bit different, but these direct counseling can be really important. And if you can get the word out, if farmers tell each other, I guess is what I'm saying, that these resources are available and that they are helpful, that has a great more sway than if just the Department of Agriculture says, oh, we have counselors, or if I guess I'm trying to say peer-to-peer is really important. And so that there are various models of that open, but it's worth looking around to see, because some people need more help than others. And right now I can tell you that our counselors for the last 1.5 or 2 years, they have both been doing a tremendous amount of marriage counseling. They said relationship counseling, relationships really came under strain during the pandemic. That has continued. And so some of them are doing family counseling, and a lot, in some situations, they're doing family counseling, and a lot they're doing couples counseling, which maybe is not what we expect. Farm advocates can be really extremely helpful. Farm advocates intervene in a way that is not as direct therapy oriented as mental health therapists. They're more in problem solving. And in Minnesota, they help navigate solutions to problems like financial difficulties, and also natural disasters. And so they really are there for immediate problem solving. They have links to social service agencies, so they can, unobtrusively peek in the refrigerator and see, does the family have enough to eat? And if not, what is a respectful way that we could connect them with grocery store coupons or food benefits temporarily? In Minnesota, they tend to be peer farmers, and they work sometimes in like a mediation situation. They can be part of the mediation, but unlike a mediator, the farm advocate doesn't stay neutral. The farm advocate is in the farmer's corner. And so they have somebody there walking with them, can go with them, say, to a legal appointment to take notes, can go with them to meet the banker, to explain the financial situation, can construct workouts, can do balance sheets. So really can provide some of that immediate situation. In 2021, ours worked for close to 9,000 hours with clients. Brochures are another thing that are handy to have. We have one in Minnesota that you can take a look at as a model if you'd like. It's at minnesotafarmstress.com. It's, I'm in the middle of something here. Sorry, working from home, husband offering me lunch. And so just some examples, and in our brochure, what we've done is not just give Minnesota Department of Agriculture resources, but look for some of our agricultural partners and include those, so that it's not an overwhelming, huge list of information for people to go through, but it's really relevant. It's curated, it's relevant, it's timely. So you can find the Farmers Legal Action Group, you can find our lending programs, you can find our farm advocates, you can find resources from Extension, all through that same tool. And then here's something that I want to offer you. We have put together a program called Down on the Farm that engages people who work with farmers. It's not targeted toward farmers, it's targeted toward people who work with farmers and are trusted by farmers to help them recognize and respond when they see farmers in trouble. So this is veterinarians. It could be FSA office staff. It could be people at elevators in town. It could be implement dealers. It could be milk haulers, people who interact with farmers, who have their ear, who see them on a regular basis, and might be able to sense when something is off. And so this is, it's a 3-hour program. It's a slide set, comes with a facilitator guide, kind of a script. You can use local experts and resource people. You don't have to pay for a license. It's free. You can adapt or modify it. And it really gets people from that community who are involved in agriculture getting together, talking about what they're seeing, and learning tools and strategies that will help them intervene, have the confidence to talk to farmers about what's going on in a respectful way, and most importantly, listen for the clues about what's going on, and then generate a list of resources that are available in that community that they all know about, that they could recommend. And so that is also available at our minnesotafarmstress.com website. You can download it, you can try it out, you can use it. It's really pretty straightforward and easy, and it fosters just excellent discussion within communities. I mentioned the phrase "you are not alone" earlier in helping the importance of farmers realizing and ranchers realizing that they aren't alone in what they're experiencing, that they don't have to do it by themselves. They are not freaks, that this happens to all of us. Whatever it is, it happens to all of us. We have done a program that's available to you too. We've done it on radio and podcast. I'm a huge fan of reaching farmers with radio because we always have it on. It's on in the shop, it's on in the tractor, it's on in the house, it's on in the truck when we're running for seed. So it's a great way to reach farmers. And we've done some broadcasting on farm networks in Minnesota, but then we've made companion podcasts that are available at that website, or you can download, you can subscribe through any podcast service that you use, Stitcher or Podcast Addict or whatever. And these are 10 to 12 minute episodes where farmers are talking about challenges that they have navigated. And you can see some of the titles there, but everything from farm accidents to losing a family member to suicide, to coping with COVID, to what it was like to pull up the courage to go and see a therapist in the darkest of doldrums. We have several episodes of farmers who either went to go see their doctor or who went to see a therapist and talk about what that was like and how they felt about it and what it did for them and what it did to them and how they got over the initial I guess the shame and embarrassment of doing that and saying, wait a minute, this is practical and I feel a lot better now. So there are a few well-meaning experts in the series, but we have found that the farmers who listen to these really love the stories of farmers like themselves. And so we just did one about bird flu, for example, a turkey producer who was talking about what it's like to be facing that. So we continue to add those, and those are available. You can link to them, you can share them with people, you can call me about them, any of that. And then the last thing I want to talk to you about is something that I think is really on the horizon, and it's kind of a movement called men's sheds. And these are activity groups for senior guys, retired or semi-retired. And they started in Australia back in the late 1980s. And there's a culture there of hanging out in the shed with your mates. And they're self-directed groups where men get together shoulder to shoulder and do stuff together. They do community projects. They go on outings. They go fishing. They make furniture. They're working together. And the premise that the men say is important is that we don't talk to each other. We talk when we are shoulder to shoulder engaged in something. And the men who have done this, it started in Australia. Now there are close to 3,000 of these worldwide, in Ireland, in the Netherlands, in Canada, starting across the United States. And they say it really decreases our loneliness and our isolation. And we get together with people like ourselves and have fun. And then there also are some great health outcomes that have been associated with these. But the men who join aren't interested in, I want to make my health better. They're interested in, I want to make friends and have a good time. And I want to get off the farm and go and do something. And I think there are great benefits here for spouses and for daughters-in-law who, and for, the next generation of farming who would like dad to have something else to do. And so we're seeing these really take off, and there's a U.S. Men's Shed Association. It's down there at the bottom, usmenssheds.org, and you can find out, there's a map, you can find out if there are some near you, or reach out and find out if you know, how to get one started or connect people who would be interested in that. And then the last thing I want to say is really, I think the importance of this work in so much of what we do in agriculture really comes through collaboration, and collaborating amplifies the opportunities and amplifies the messages. And as we think about who has a dog in this fight, who has a stake in the wellness, the mental and physical and financial wellness of farm and ranching operations, the list goes on and on and on. And we have found some tremendous partners who get the word out, who provide support, who provide funding, who provide encouragement, who provide voices. And so we're creating a community that really is there for each other in agriculture, and recognizes that it's wonderful and horrible sometimes at the same time, and sometimes day to day. And that we love it passionately, we want to succeed, and there are important things that we can do for each other to grow stronger and kind of bake a bigger pie rather than dividing the pie up into little tiny morsels. And I'm going to stop there and find out if you have questions or comments, or if there's anything that you want to share about your own experiences, or just sort of wonder aloud about. And I'm going to, while you're thinking about that, I'm going to put my contact information in the chat. Oh, I guess I can't. I only have a chat to going to Sarah, the host. I can't chat with everybody, but I don't know how Sarah wants to handle that.
See where it says more at the bottom of the screen? Click those little buttons.
No, I've got the chat box open, but when I click on two, the only option I get is Sarah.
Meg, try to push next to my name. There's a little down arrow.
Yep.
Click on that and you should be able to put to everyone.
Nope. No, I can't. I could earlier, but I can't now.
Okay, just share it with me and I can share with the group.
Excellent.
Okay. And then I am going to actually share my screen once again. I want to first start off with thanking Meg for connecting with us today and presenting her wonderful materials about ag stress and the resources available. I know much of what she shared was regarding Minnesota, but understanding that every state does have resources available, or that there are resources available through Farm Aid, through that 1-800-FARM-AID number. Feel free to reach out to myself or Meg, and I will happily help connect you to someone that could help. This is something that I personally have a passion in, and would be happy to help as well. So here on the MAB side, I just want to remind you all that if you are interested in pursuing the MAB, or just want to have some time to share your perspective with us, you can visit our website at mab.ksu.edu and choose a time that works for you with your schedule. This will automatically reserve some time with Deborah Cole, our managing director, to chat via Zoom or telephone if you don't have access to Zoom. But if you're on here right now, you probably do. If you look at the screen there, we have it circled on our MAB website, schedule an advising appointment in red. We have 2 webinars planned for June. The first is our monthly informational webinar on June 14th. where our MAB Managing Director will give insight to the MAB program and answer questions in a live forum. Our second webinar is June 28th. We will hear from Dr. Brian Bergman, who will talk to us about the changing interest rates and what impacts those interest rates are going to have on us moving forward, what we can expect. Feel free to invite others who you think could benefit from either of these two webinars. We would love to see them on those webinars. And lastly, if you have not connected with us on social media, please do so. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So we would love to see you guys connected to us on those social media channels as well. We do always like to get input from folks that are connected to the UAB and insight on what is happening in the agribusiness sector. Feel free again to reach out to myself or Meg. I will share with you Meg's information here and leave that up on the screen for everyone in case you want to copy that information down. Thank you all so much for joining us today. We hope you have a wonderful day. And again, feel free to connect with myself or Meg if you have any additional questions.